Hi all, welcome to our YouTube channel Professor Cloud. The Kubernetes crew just dropped a latest new release 1.26 with named as Electrifying a few days ago, and it's packed with some serious cool new features. There are 37 enhancements in this release. 11 of them are graduating to stable, 10 are graduating to beta, and 16 of them are graduating to alpha. One of the cool new feature that we are going to talk about in this video is validating admission policy. And let me tell you why. Validating admission policies offers a declarative in-process alternative to validating admission webhooks. Validating admission policies uses the common expression language to declare the validation rule of a policy. So let's see how validating admission policy works. Okay. So this validating admission policy is generally made up of three resources. One is the validating admission policy that you can see. The another one is the validating admission policy binding, and the third one is a parameter resource. Okay. So validating admission policy, where you define the policy, okay, what things you want to impose and all, and the validating admission policy binding help you to bind that and provides a scoping. So let's say that you want this policy to be applicable to and any pods with specific labels, or any deployments, or you can have that on a namespace level as well. The parameter resource provides information to a validating admission policy. So what it is doing is, within the validating admission policy, you are separating out the policy configuration from its definition, and that's where you can reuse the uh, policy definitions in different policies as well. So we'll see all those things later in the time of demo. Okay, so to start off with, this feature, you have to enable this since it is in the alpha. So whenever you install, you have to ensure that the validating admission policy feature gate is enabled, and ensure that the admission registration API is enabled. So on the screen, you can see that this is a simple policy that we have defined, and we'll see like how it defines and what things are required to define a policy. Okay, the first thing that you have to see is like this is the admission registration API version that we have enabled in our API server. Okay, and this is one of the kind that we have already talked, like if you have to define your policy, you have to use kind validating admission policy. Then you can give a name to your policy, whatever it is, and after this the specs plays the important role. The specs are divided into three sections mainly. One is what to be done, that is defined by the failure policy, like whether you want to fail your policy if the expressions or the validation doesn't approve also, or if you want to ignore. So basically it has only two values, one is ignore and the other one is fail. Okay, match constant is specifically defines like where you want to impose your validation policy, like if you want to impose it on deployments or pods or replica sets or like stateful sets also. Okay, so here you can see that we are imposing this to deployments. Okay, and we are trying to impose at the time of create or update. Okay, and the API version and the API group. So we know that it works on the API version v1 and it is of API groups apps. Okay, the third important step is like what kind of validation that we are going to impose. So this here it comes the CEL, which we talked about, like how it helps us to provide it. So here if you see that what we are doing is like objects dot specs dot replicas. So what we are trying to do is if the replicas of the deployment is greater than equals to 3. Replica should be greater than equals to 3. If it is less, then it is going to fail the policy. Okay, since we have provided this fail over here, you see fail, and this fail is basically prints with a message like what we have given. For HA, please have replicas more than 3. Okay, more than or equal to 3. Okay, so this is what is going to happen, and this object that we are overseeing is nothing but the deployment object that is going to be picked up by the API server, KUBE server. Okay, so this is how the policy definition works. Now let's take an example of like how to bind this policy to different scopes. Okay, that we have seen. So again, this is the definition of a policy binding where we have to provide the API version. I guess we have already enabled this in API server. This is the kind of the validation, validating admission policy binding, and this is the metadata, which means the name of the binding that we are going to give. So now within this binding, we have to provide the policy, like which policy we want to bind it. So here if you see that this is the policy name, which I guess we have created earlier in this section, demo-policy.example.com, or let's say that anything else. And now where we want to impose it, it is defined from here. Like what we have like match the resources, and within the match resources we have used namespace selector. So this policy is going to be imposed on a namespace level. Okay, so namespace, and the namespace which is having environment test as a label. So any deployments that are going to be added to the namespace, okay, where environment is test, in those it is going to see that if the replica count is less than equals to 3, okay, then it is going to fail. Okay, so this is how it is going to work. Okay, so I guess we have seen the definition, and we have also seen how the policy is there, and policy binding. Let's take an uh, demo and see how it works in real. Okay, so for that, yeah, so we are going to use Killer Code Playgrounds, and it has 1.26 Kubernetes which is present, and we are going to use it. Okay, let's start off. So let's go to this our repository, and we have already said that if we want to use it, we have to enable these gates. So what we'll do is we'll just copy it down, and we'll just change Kubernetes manifest kube API server. Okay, so this is the Kubernetes API server definition, and we'll just add it over here. Okay, uh, let's align properly. Okay, so this is there, and this is once done. Save this, and it might take some time. So we'll do ctl get pod kube system. So we'll know that when the Kubernetes API server comes up with the latest changes that we did. So now the Kubernetes API server is back with our changes. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to clone this repository. Okay, go to validating admission policy. Okay, I need to stop over one. Okay, and oh sorry, and see what all files that we have. Okay, so first let's check like what is the admission policy. So here if you see that we have provided a policy name as demo-policy.example.com, that is fine. We are going to fail this policy if it doesn't pass it. we are going to apply these policies on to deployments at the time of create or update. And what we are saying is like object spec replicas should be greater than or equal to 3. Okay, so if this doesn't implies, it is going to fail. Okay, now let's see the bindings. So let's just say admission policy binding and see the definition. Okay, this is again the API version. Okay, the name of the binding policy name. Let's see, policyunion.com. It is correct. And now what we are doing is like we are imposing this on a namespace selector where the environment is test. Okay, so cool. Let's just apply it. kubectl apply -f admission policy .yaml, and we should see a green symbol. Okay, then kubectl apply -admission policy binding, that is also there. Now what we need to do is we need to label our namespace. So k label namespace ns default what do we environment equals test. Okay, the namespace is labeled, and now let's just try for failure. Okay, we'll just try for failure. Okay, so let's say k create deployment. Okay, nginx image is equal to nginx, and replicas we are going to give it 2. Okay, see how it says. Oops, it failed. And if you see for HA, please have replicas more than 3. Okay, so now if you see that fail to create deployments apps nginx is forbidden. Why? Because at sorry, validating admission policy demo policy.example.com with bindings to this has denied your request because it should have greater than 3. So let's just try it for passing it now. Okay, so let's say key create deployment nginx again, and this image is equal to nginx, and this time we are going to give replicas greater than 3, or let's say 3. Okay, and it should pass. Oops, cars equals to 3. Oops, and this created. Wow. Get pods, if you see that the containers are creating, so this means that we are actually having a validation policy which is getting imposed within the Kubernetes itself without adding any external engines like the OPA gatekeeper or so. A couple of more demos that we have, but before that we'll just go through few definitions again, and we'll understand how to do it. Okay, so there is another kind which is called as a parameter resource, which provides information to a validating admission policy to make a concrete statement. um, we have seen parameter resource. So this what does this parameter resource does is it is like we define this as our definition. Okay, and then we create a policy over here. Okay, so what we are trying to do is like we are trying to separate out the policy and the definition, and this policy can then be binded to different resources like a namespace a x or namespace y with different bindings also. So what we are trying to do is a single policy that we are going to create, and that policy can be binded with n number of bindings and applied to different namespaces or different resources also. Okay, here what we are doing is like we are separating out the definition of the policy. This can be done either using a config map, okay, or using the CRDs. Okay, so in the example what we are going to take look at both by using config map and by using CRDs as well. So the main point over here is like you, with the help of parameter resource, which is provided in your policy, okay, you can separate it out the definition, okay, because there might be chances like you can have complex definitions. So right now we did only evaluated only one statement. There might be like you have to evaluate 10 or 10 plus statements or so. So in that case, we wanted to keep the definition separate out, attach it to the policy, and then use the bindings to apply it to different namespaces or different scopes. Okay, so let's just take a look like how we can do that. Okay, to do that, again, we what we are doing is we are creating a policy. Okay, so first we are creating a policy. We define the name of the policy over here. Okay, scope of it, we have kept it sorry, we have kept it fail. Okay, so if this doesn't pass, it is going to fail. And okay, the interesting thing over here is the parameter kind. What we are trying to do is, okay, so if you see that this profcloud.com/v1 is a crd that we are going to create. Okay, it's a custom resource definition, and the kind of that custom resource definition is replica limit. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to impose replica limit. Okay, okay, that these many number of replicas should be there, or else it should fail. Like it should not go beyond 3 or 4. It should only have 2 or less than 2 or so. This rule again is imposed on as per our previous policy deployments. Okay, deployments. Okay, while create or update. Okay, now here the interesting thing is towards the validation side. Okay, we'll take a look how it is going to evaluate. Okay, first thing is like objects dot spec dot replica. This is basically coming from the deployment definition. Okay, definition, and here if you see that params dot specs dot bin replica. Okay, so this params is nothing but the parameter kind that we have defined over here. So this is coming from the CRDs. Okay, and within the CRD definition, it is specified in the spec dot min replica, the minimum replicas that we can have. Okay, that can be 3, 4, or 5, whatever that you can define. Okay, this is how it is. So what this is a policy. Okay, within that policy, we have defined the what you can say parameters where the definition is there. Okay, for our policy. Now let's take a look at the policy binding. Okay, so policy binding, if you see, this is the validation policy where we have provided the policy name. And now here if you see what we are going to param reference, like what test.profcloud.com is going to be my CRD name. Okay, which is present in default namespace, and it is going to be applied to this one. Okay, so wherever the environment is test, where the label is added to any namespace at that location. Okay, the interesting thing over here is like you might be aware, you might be like curious about like how this CRD is going to look. Okay, so we'll just take a look over here. Let's go to demo 2 and let's just go to the CRD. Okay, so this is the replica. So here if you see that we have named this replica limits.profcloud.com. Okay, group under profcloud.com, and the interesting thing to look over here is the specs section. Properties min replicas of type integer. Okay, it is a namespace scope, and this is the definition that we are creating. Okay, so this is the CRD. Now after this, what we are going to do is we are going to create the object of this replica limit. So here if you see the test.profcloud.com is the name of the object that we want to refer. Okay, and here if you see that here in the policy binding we have used this name. Okay, so you have to mention that name over here, and the number of minimum replicas, or like how many replicas that you want to provide it and all that you have to specify over here. Okay. I hope that you guys are clear with this, and I guess we can go and do some hands-on over here. Okay. So to do that, um, let's go to demo 2. Okay, first, and we'll see a few things. Okay, so first thing is like we have to apply for our CRD. So we are going to do CRD apply. Our definition applies. To check that, get CRD. You can see replica limits.profcloud.com is created. Okay, now let's just create the rule. Okay, k apply hyphen f rule. Okay, rule. So here the rule is applied. Okay, so let's just take what rule we have. Okay, so what we said that minimum replicas should be 3. Okay, and name of this is test.profcloud.com. Okay, now let's check about the policy. Okay, so how our policy looks. Here if you see, we have provided API version profcloud.com v1. The kind is replica limit. Okay, and here what we are trying to do is the object replica should be greater than or equal to whatever that we have defined. Okay, min replicas. Invalid replica should be greater than 3 for HA. Okay, and all. Okay, now let's also check about binding. Okay, in the binding section, again, if you see, we have to specify the parameter reference. Okay, so in which namespace that we want to define it, it is default. Okay, and where we can find this parameter definition that we have specified, and the name of the definition, test.profcloud.com. Okay, in which everything is specified, and it is going to be applicable to the namespaces where label environment test is present. Okay, clear. Okay, so let's just apply the policy. Okay, apply hyphen f policy.yaml, and I guess it is applied. Okay, now the binding, apply hyphen f binding. Sorry, now the binding is also applied. Okay, interestingly, let's do it like this: k create deployment. Okay, nginx hyphen image is equal to nginx hyphen replicas equals to 1. Okay, it says, oops, I guess we have not deleted the previous policy. Okay, cool. cd dot cd demo 1. Okay, cool. Okay, now we'll just apply k create deployment nginx image as nginx and replicas as 1. Okay, let's say, oops, it says greater than to have higher HA. Okay, okay, now let's say again we'll try this. Now this time we'll have 3, and it says, oh, nginx is already there. Let's make it nginx hyphen 2 and see, now it is working fine. So here if you see that now this is coming from the replica binding profcloud.com that we have recently, that invalid as replica should be greater than 3 for HA. Okay, that is the same message that we have added over here. Invalid as replica should be greater than 3 for HA. Okay, so cool. Now you have what we did is we have created a CRD. We have created a CRD. We have separated out the policy and its definition and binded that, and now binded it with to a specific namespace. Now this policy that we have created can be binded to n number of different bindings, and that can be applied to different namespaces also. Okay, cool. replicas. Okay, now let's say that there might be chances that where we have to create some complex policies where, let's say that my image registry should be xyz.com only. Okay, your company profile, and there might be like image tag should not be latest. Okay, which can be there, or there can be n number of like n number of rules that can be there. Okay, so we have seen a very basic rule where like we are just trying to play with replicas, params dot spec dot replicas or so. Now let's say that let's take an example where like we wanted to have all these two things. Okay, so let's just go to our example. Okay, in the demo 4. Okay, we have seen the parameter resource uh, with CRD. Okay, now we'll see the parameter resource with the configuration map. So how you can define your uh, uh, parameters within the config map and use those in evaluating the policies. Okay, so let's just go to demo 4. Okay, let's just go to our playground demo. Okay, cd dot cd demo, oops, demo 4. Okay, okay, so let's just go ahead from here. Okay, so we have an admission policy, we have an admission policy binding. So within the admission policy, if you see, this is label policy example.com is the name. Okay, here the parameter kind, that what we are doing is like we are using config map as the parameter kind from which the definition will be picked. Okay, API version v1, and it is going to be imposed on deployments for the creation or the updation part. The resource that we are going to validate is like objects. So what we are going to validate is like this should uh, the image registry should only be docker.io. Okay, that we are going to impose. Okay, if it is other than that, then our validating admission policy will fail and it will not allow it. Okay, so here if you see object spec template spec containers dot all, so any containers, init containers, or any containers that are there in our definition of deployments. Okay, the image should start with, and now here if you see, this is going to be coming from parameters. Okay, so the parameter is the config map. Okay, so params.data.registry name. Okay, so now we have seen this is coming from config map. So let's just see the config map definition first. Okay, within the config map, you see params.data.registry name should be docker.io. If it is not docker.io, it should not allow it. Okay, so this is how it is defined. And in the policy binding, it is going to be simple like parameters reference. So this is going to be your config map name, which is present in the default namespace, and it is going to be applicable to a namespace selector where the environment, where the label is environment test. Okay, okay, cool. Let's just apply this. Okay, first of all, we'll just apply config map. Okay, k apply -f config map. Okay, and our config map is created, label in deployments. Okay, now apply policy. Okay, what is the name? Admission policy.yaml. Okay, k apply -f admission policy binding that we have applied. And now let's just try to create a deployment. Okay, okay, create deployment nginx 3. Oh, sorry, this is a demo 4, right? Image is equal to nginx. Okay, now image is going to be the slash nginx. Okay, replicas is equal to 1. Okay, Oops, it says that denied image from an untrusted registry. Now, if you see that this is not applied or not allowed because this is not a trusted registry. What configuration that we have imposed is like the registry should be only be docker.io. Okay, so let's just try to create the deployment. Okay, create deployment nginx 4, and in the image let's say docker.io slash nginx replicas is equal to hope this works. Oops, yes, and this allowed because now docker.io is a valid registry that is defined as per the policy. So that's how the uh, parameter resource is working. Okay, we have already covered the image registry part. Now we'll just cover image tag should not be latest also. Okay, and to do that we are going to again implement using the CRDs. Okay, so here in the custom resource definition, we have created a definition to have an exclude tags. Okay, so this is going to be our kind exclude tag. Okay, and the tags can be provided as string. Okay, so we'll see. This is the CRD, and the rule that we are going to have is profcloud.com/v1 kind as exclude tag, name of our resource, and spec exclude tag as latest. So this policy, so this definition is going to be added to this policy. Okay, where we have provided profcloud.com/v1 exclude tag, and this is going to be applied again back to deployments and the validation expressions. If you see, so here image ends with params.spec.exclude tag, and this is exclamatory mark should not ends with latest tag. Okay, cannot use the latest tag. So this is the error message that we should get. Okay, so let's just go to our playground and try to implement it. So this is under demo 3. Okay, it's in working directory cd demo 3, and here we have, so first of all apply the custom resource definition. ctl apply -fcrd.yaml that we have applied. Now the time to rule. Okay, get crd, check whether the crd is there or not. Yes, we have exclude tags crd. Apply -f this rules file. Okay, we have imposed the rule as well. Now is the time for the policy -f policy. Okay, we have created the policy named as image policy, and then a binding to impose this. So image tag test profcloud.com, that also impose. Now let's just try to create a deployment. Okay, create deployment nginx with image as nginx latest tag and replicas equals to 2. Since we have imposed a policy that should not allow any image with the latest tag, so this should fail. Let's see. And yes, it is failing. It says that cannot use the latest tag. Okay, so we'll just try to deploy another one, and this is going to be without latest tag. Let's say that 1.2.1 is that we want to do, and as you can see it is allowing us. So we have seen the power of validating admission policy. Okay, but there are few drawbacks that I have seen or I felt is like it requires to get mature enough. Okay, though this is using CEL, so it has a lot of power in evaluating the expressions. So you can see all the expressions examples that are present over here. Okay, so the one thing that I'm actually trying to want the Kubernetes community to implement is like the expression evaluation in the uh, uh, in the policy error message. So if you see demo 2, and let's say that this is the policy, if you see that invalid as the replica should be greater than 3. So I want here params.spec.min replica should be added over here. So in such a way that dynamically it should get whatever the min replicas which is present, and it should showcase this to us. So this is one of the cool features that we just saw from the Electrifying Kubernetes 1.26 update. Uh, so please let us know your feedback in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Thank you guys. Bye bye.